Welcome into Georgia High School Sports Daily, powered by IBEW Local 613. From the Breda Pest Management Sports Desk, I'm your host, Landon Knight, alongside Craig Sager and Hayden Gilbert. Guys, we are still closely following the Gainesville updates. Hayden, just brief us in on what the recent updates are.
So the recent updates are Gainesville and Hughes will play on Friday night. The other 5A games have been delayed till, I believe, next Thursday. As of right now, the GHSA is not appealing the decision of the Hall County Superior Court. All 38 players will be eligible to play in this game. If there are any suspensions, they will come from Gainesville High School, not from the GHSA. And the game will be played as scheduled, as it was expected before any of this fight happened.
So Hayden, with this officially being in motion, now this game will take place. Just talk about, if you're in this role of the coaches of either of these programs, just that mindset and approach that you are going to give your players encouragement to take going into this matchup.
I mean, I think you have to come into this game trying to use this past week, even with all of the chaos, with all of the unknown, to further your team, especially if you're Gainesville, with all of the drama surrounding it. Still have your players, still have practice this past week, and use that basis of bye week to get ready for this big matchup against one of the best teams in the state.
And Hayden, can you also give us updates on what this is going to mean for the state championship, where it's going to be held at, location, everything?
So, unlike we feared, the games will be played in Mercedes-Benz. However, 6A will not be the nightcap of the final night like it normally is. 6A will now be moved to Tuesday night. It will be played in the place of what was the 5A championship game. The 5A championship game will be moved to that Wednesday night, to the final game of the season in the state, giving them a little bit of time between that Thursday semifinal matchup with both semifinals and the state championship game.
And Hayden, now that a decision has been reached with this circumstance, just talk about, in this situation, what can truly be learned from it, and what example does this create for other athletes in the future?
I mean, it all is going to really depend on how the GHSA reacts moving forward. If nothing happens, I do think that there is a precedent of that if you're attacked and you do defend yourself, that you won't be, that there is no punishment for that, that nothing will be done, because that's what now a legal precedent, not a GHSA precedent, has stated. However, if the GHSA does change the ruling or the wording of the ruling, you may see now that this kind of thing of, because there was no ejections, they can't be suspended. Maybe that loophole / ambiguity in this rule may be sewn up to where if you leave the sidelines, you are ejected, or just any plethora of rule changes that could come from this.
Yeah, and what I think is interesting about this situation, it really was a saga. I mean, the ups and downs, kind of a tug of war right in front of our faces. But now you're going to have the other side of the bracket, the Thomas County Central Roswell game. It gets pushed back to December 11th. That will be that semifinal, same day as whoever wins the Hughes-Gainesville game will take on Rome. And then their decision to flip the 6A to 5A, that gives them the extra week. So from the start, this situation had I'm sure it could have been even more time concerning, but they really were strained with how quickly they had to move through this. So I feel like being able to still play the championships and kind of get out of this mess, this really was kind of the best case scenario when things looked really uncertain. Are we going to have to play at a neutral site? What's going on here? How long are the courts going to take? So you got to give them a lot of credit to at least get to the bottom of this.
Yeah, I mean, theoretically, the GHSA had 30 days from the appeal, from the ruling of the Hall County Superior Court to file an appeal. I mean, this could have dragged out past the New Year's had everybody used all of their time to appeal. I'm glad. I think especially if you're these other three teams that are just sitting there waiting, they're very glad that this is over with, that they're going to get to play football and they're not waiting around for whatever the GHSA and Gainesville's final decision is.
Now let's take a look at this bracket again. Here you're going to see, we got to talk about this yesterday, but this Rome team has just been sitting in limbo wondering which one of these teams that they're going to see. Just talk about, if you are this Rome team, how you keep focused during a time like this and how you can stay prepared leading up into this matchup.
Well, I think with Rome, I mean, I've been really impressed. You look at this season, they had a game week 1 in the Corky Kell Dave Hunter Classic against Creekside. They're up big in that game. That game gets away from them, but it was still a learning opportunity for them, saying, okay, we got to get better conditioned. This is really the first time we've seen someone come to our place and really kind of out hustle us and have the edge in conditioning. Rome's a team where they got their guys in track. That's usually their strength. So I feel like this team got hit in the mouth early on in the season. They've gotten better and better. They've really found something with Aiden McPherson, his athleticism, leading the offense, and they beat a really great Jackson County team in the last round. So now they've got some time to put kind of that journey in the rearview mirror and just focus on this next opponent. It gives them a little extra time. They're back in the semifinals. I feel like Rome, when you look at this situation, they're kind of just the one team that's able to just wait and see who they're going to play. So I feel like they can just focus on themselves and really be ready to go.
Yeah, I think when you look at this Rome team, they've been underrated all season because of those first two losses. I think everyone thought that both those teams, Carrollton and Creekside, were going to be really good teams. I don't think any of us viewed them both as top 25 teams in the country. Creekside's been dominant throughout the entire season. It's dominated everyone they played, including DeSoto out of Texas. No one's really even come close to beating them. And then Carrollton, as we saw last week, was a top 15 team in this country, just beat the number one team in the country in Grayson. So those two losses don't look nearly as bad in how they've played really good. And now they have some time that wasn't originally planned, but now they can just get healthy, fix some stuff from a really sloppy game they played against Jackson County. That I believe they missed 3 field goals in that game. They turned the ball over multiple times. I think for them, this is really let's get right with us and fix the mistakes that we've made over the past couple of weeks that could have lost us games, but didn't, because we're about to play a really, really good team in neither Hughes or Gainesville.
And guys, one of the things that I feel I've been able to take away from this situation is you look at it, and Coach Niblett has been so outspoken. He's really had to step into this leadership role and really he has very high standards for this program. So what are some of those takeaways that you can take away from Coach Niblett during a time like this?
Well, yeah, I mean, from the start, I feel like Gainesville had a consistent message on how they felt about the situation. They really chose their own side from the start. They did every single thing they could to try to get their guys back on the field, and in the end, they succeeded. And now we've got a huge matchup this Friday night. It's going to be televised. And I think just the added spotlight to this matchup, I think is a big opportunity for both these teams to go out there, show great sportsmanship, and really put on an excellent game. A game that might not have happened the way it's going to, but now that you have the opportunity to go full strength, I just feel like win or loss, it's an opportunity for both these teams to go out there and just show what makes their programs successful.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, Gainesville is who they were supposed to be going into this game. This is everything we wanted from this game before all this happened. It's exciting. It's a game that, I mean, I think one of those games that you look forward to all year. This is a rematch of a state championship game from just a few years ago. I mean, at the very least, you have to be excited about this game because it's going to be a great game.
In this process we've mentioned, guys, it's been drawn out, but this Roswell and Thomas County Central matchup is not going to take place now until next week. Again, I want to extend the same question. As far as being a coach in that situation, how do you keep your team focused, drawing out that fourth round of the playoffs until the middle of next week?
Well, the good thing is they got to play this last week because, I mean, there was still questions. I mean, is the entire 5A bracket going to have to be delayed? I mean, ultimately it was pushed back, but not as much. They've got a few more days to prepare. They know the opponent. We've talked about how Coach Thompson at Roswell has played Thomas County Central in the past. I feel like it's just going to allow them, each of these teams, to be even better prepared. I think that is a tremendous matchup on the left side of the bracket. And Roswell might be one of the few teams offensively that can keep pace with Thomas County Central.
Yeah, I think when you look at both these teams, and really any team that has made it to this point in the playoffs, these are all teams that are really good teams. They're all teams that are complete teams. I don't think you have to worry about getting distracted because at this point, if you were going to be distracted, you'd have already been distracted and you probably would have already lost. These are all really senior-laden teams. These are all teams that have a lot of experience, and at the very least, you have 13 games of experience as a starter for every starter on these teams because you played a lot of football up to this point. Keeping your kids focused on everything that they need to do is kind of tough. These are high school kids, but I do think these coaching staffs know what they're doing because obviously they do because they've made it this far into the playoffs.
And guys, looking ahead to some other good matchups I just want to talk about as we're looking at these brackets, but also we're going to see a Creekside and Kell matchup this week. We actually got to see this Kell team play last week, but we're going to get to see that matchup on Friday night. Just what's going to be key in securing that win and moving to the state championship?
Well, I think heading into the Cartersville matchup, we talked about how key it was going to be for Kell not to turn the ball over. They did extremely well in that department. Same thing is going to be true against Creekside. You cannot give them extra opportunities. They can score so quickly. They can close out halves very well. So it's going to be about ball control and seeing what we saw from Kell this last week with the play action, with the running of Mooney Gibson. I feel like offensively they're confident, but they have got to protect the football against this Creekside team.
Yeah, I think for Creekside, you have to set the edge. You have to do all of that, which Cartersville really struggled with. They couldn't set the edge. They didn't do the little stuff. They didn't cover the running back out of the backfield when he was in pass protection, just leaked out. I think that was really hurt Cartersville. I think Creekside has to do better on that, and they have to really set the tone in the run game. We know how good this Kell secondary is. The front seven's really good, but it's not as talented as the secondary. They're going to have to be able to run the ball, which they should be able to with this much talent. But I thought Cartersville was going to be able to run the ball. They didn't. If you get one dimensional against this Kell defense, they're going to shut you down, just as they have with basically every team they played all season.
And guys, looking ahead to next weekend, we have our Corky Kell Dave Hunter Basketball Classic event coming up. That's going to be December 12th and 13th. It's a 2-day event. On Friday, we will be at Newton, and Saturday, we will be at Gainesville. On Friday night, we're going to get to see this Hebron girls team play. They have 3 D1 commits. Super excited to see this matchup, guys. What are you just most looking forward to as we get closer to our Dave Hunter Corky Kell Classic event?
I really am interested in Gainesville on the boys' side. We're going to talk about the basketball rankings later in the show. They got bumped up to number 1 this week, had some huge victories over Woodward Academy, Dutchtown, 2 teams in the top 5 in their classification. They have their next game against Chattahoochee, which will open region play. So we're going to see Gainesville heading into this matchup against Pinson Valley as one of the top teams in Class 5A.
Right after this, we're going to get to hear from Executive Director of the GHSA, Tim Scott. Stay tuned.
Nobody wants to hear the word roaches, because who wants to admit they have roaches?
I actually found some weird roaches. I didn't know what they were. I decided to choose Breda. I reached out to them. They check in routinely. They're explaining what they're doing, so there's a lot of clarity in the process as well. I think that just speaks to the level of safety that I feel with the organization.
The facts are, roaches are everywhere in our environment, so what are you doing to keep them out of your home?
Breda, Breda, no need to be afraid of bugs.
For a healthier future together, look to Northside Hospital.
This makes my dad proud. He went through his whole career as an employee. Now I'm the employer, something he didn't achieve.
We are signatory to IBEW and do IBEW people wherever we go that we feel like they are faster and better than any of our competition.
The advantages of being a signatory contractor is you're trained employees. You have unlimited manpower. It allows me to bid on jobs that I ordinarily would not go after.
You may know Tidal Wave Auto Spa as the world's greatest car wash, but did you know Tidal Wave also has the easiest fundraiser? So easy, our mascots think they can do anything, like making the big play on the big stage. Okay, maybe just a dream, but it is a super easy fundraiser. Just sell wash tickets and watch the money come in. If your team, school, church, or group needs funds, go to TidalWaveAutoSpa.com and get started today.
Georgia's Rome is the place to be this holiday season. Visit our vibrant downtown. Enjoy live concerts. Go ice skating. Shop holiday markets. And book a Christmas trolley tour. Make your weekend getaway one to remember. Plan your fun now at RomeGeorgia.org.
Georgia High School Sports Daily is brought to you by the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 613. Electrify your career. And by Breda Pest Management. They handle bugs and critters.
Welcome back into Georgia High School Sports Daily. We are at the Breda Pest Management Sports Desk, and now we will welcome Executive Director of the GHSA, Tim Scott. Tim Scott, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey guys, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
So, Dr. Scott, Gainesville has now been given the approval to play with all of the players on their roster against Langston Hughes in the 4th round of the playoffs. Can you brief us on how this conclusion was eventually reached?
Well, you know, obviously they filed an appeal, and the judge there in Hall County placed the injunction on us, and so that was fine. We were moving forward. And looking at everything, it come to my attention, we had a similar issue earlier this year in August, and our office, the GHSA office, did not handle it appropriately, and that's completely my responsibility. And so I felt like since we had handled one a little differently earlier this year, that we needed to make sure we corrected this one. So that's what we did yesterday by, you know, moving on and saying, hey, let's play.
And in situations like this altercation, how can coaches do a better job educating their players on what the rules are to prevent situations like this from happening in the future?
Well, the rule, you know, every team has to have a safety plan. Some people call it a fight plan, or if something breaks out, and we should have that. Officials are told when you have a fight that breaks out that you use your whistle, you use your voice, you don't grab players and that kind of stuff. And so the officials would do that. And then on the sidelines, you should send some coaches to the field, while others should really turn their backs to the field and make sure they keep the young people on the sideline. It's a lot easier to contain a fight or an issue with, you know, 8 or 9 players or 4 or 5 players than it is with 60 or 80 on the field.
And Tim, in that situation with Gainesville and Brunswick, calling the game in the 3rd quarter, whose decision was that? And then when you call a game like that and there's no ejections because the game's just called at that point, moving forward, how better can those situations be rightly examined?
Well, I think both schools met and they reached out to our office and said, hey, we feel like you know, safety reasons, we just need to call the game. I think at the time it was 42-0 maybe, something like that. And so we approved that, and that's up to the school, and the school made that call. The officials in their report said they were so concerned for their safety, and there were so many students on the field, it was hard to get numbers. That's where the bylaw comes in, where we are allowed to view video and make those calls from there. We're going to do a deep dive into really looking at the bylaw and how it affects our schools, and I think we can do some things and maybe have an official if they get in a situation, because it is difficult if you have 7 officials and 4 of them or 5 of them are trying to, you know, get kids to settle down. The other 2 trying to take numbers, they're bound to miss a number, and we need to review it. And that's 2 sides to that coin. You know, did they write a number down where a young person wasn't involved and we can clear them, or did they miss, you know, somebody that might have been involved?
Yeah, Coach, Dr. Scott, when you look at some of the ambiguity in the rule that Gainesville sort of used to say that because there was no ejections that they shouldn't be suspended, will there be any adjustment to that, or do you think bylaws like that will kind of stay the same?
We're gonna take a deep dive and really look at it, and I hope in April we'll have an opportunity to really collaborate as an organization and make the proper changes and move forward with it.
And then obviously you guys want to be fair to all the teams still alive in the Class 5A playoffs. So how important was it to get this decision with all the factors and set these dates, and how do you feel about the end result?
Well, I think it's real important, and Our office sets those dates, and that's a decision. I did listen to coaches yesterday, and obviously Thomas County Central and Roswell would have loved to play this Friday, but I feel like it was important that both semifinals be played on the same night. And so we're playing, Friday night will be the Gainesville Hughes game, and then the following Thursday night will be the two semifinals, and then the following Wednesday in Mercedes-Benz will be the 5A state championship.
Then, Dr. Scott, what went into the decision to swap the 6A and 5A game, and just what went to that decision, and how hard was that to make?
Well, I think that was the right thing to do. That gives you a short week. If you're playing on Thursday and then you had to turn around and play on Tuesday, that's a really short week. So by giving them, that just gives them an extra day to prepare for the game.
And then that initial decision to suspend the 38 players, where did that number come from? What was that process?
That came from me looking at film. We looked at a whole lot of film. We sat down and tried to identify, and it was very difficult. Some of it's hard to tell, and that's why we have an appeal process. And if I get something wrong and they appeal it, and I was wrong, well, let's change it and get it right. The thing is to try to get it right and do the best we can. But again, that's where we viewed the video and tried to make a decision that way.
And Dr. Scott, are there going to be any quarterfinal matchups that you're attending on this Friday night?
Yeah, there's going to be a time. I'm going to go to the Hughes Gainesville game.
And just talk about what can be learned on behalf of this situation by the GHSA.
Well, for our office, we have to do a better job of making sure we follow bylaws, and our processes are all consistent. We have to make sure we do that. It's important that we are consistent and we stay with those bylaws, and that there's an appeal process for our schools if they don't feel that we've done that. And I think that process is what we went through here and where we're at, and we're going to hopefully move forward and make the best of it. And our office is going to learn that how to keep from making those mistakes, and we're going to really work at that. So we got a lot to do here at the office to make sure we can do a better job.
And then, Tim, what was interesting about this melee was the ball was near their own end zone. The altercation took place halfway or near midfield. The players went out there. So do you feel like there's any rules where the players that are already on the field, if the altercation is like downfield or yards away, if they go towards it, what's the kind of plan of action to dissuade that behavior?
Well, we may need to qualify that some in the bylaw. That's kind of come into question, and that's something we're going to certainly look at. Did they get down in the group? Were they kind of mixed in there, and maybe they were mixed in there trying to pull a kid off a kid, or maybe they were down there trying to help somebody out. But it's sometimes very difficult to tell when you have so many athletes on the field. That's why it's so important. Just, did you see Ole Miss on Saturday? They had an issue of the same thing, and the coaches kept the players off the field. I think it's very important that we don't allow players to get on the field in those situations, and we can contain them while they're small.
And then if there's like a hit during a game where it's a defenseless player or something, and the player gets ejected and someone argues it's a judgment call, have you seen a lot of appeals with other suspensions, and is that a concern?
No, we haven't seen that many appeals as far as that goes.
Again, that was Executive Director of the GHSA, Dr. Tim Scott. Dr. Scott, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, thank you for having me. I appreciate what you guys do. Have a good day.
We will be right back after this short break with more Georgia High School Sports Daily. Stay tuned. Welcome back into Georgia High School Sports Daily. We are at the Breda Pest Management Sports Desk, and now we will welcome Gainesville Athletic Director Adam Lindsey. Mr. Lindsey, thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. I appreciate y'all having me.
So these last 2 weeks have clearly been a very historical time in high school football. Just talk about this role that you hold and how you've been able to implement making big decisions for your athletic department.
Well, fortunately, we're in our system, we're lucky to have the support of our superintendent and our Board of Education. Obviously, last week was not exactly how we expected to spend our Thanksgiving break. At the end of the day, we wanted to do everything we could to support our kids and make sure that the best right decision was being made. Fortunate that and excited about the opportunity to play Langston on Friday night and continue on with the GHSA playoffs.
And Mr. Lindsey, you just touched on this, but going into the fourth round of the playoffs, Gainesville is set to see Langston Hughes this upcoming Friday night. Just talk about how you've seen this football program be able to stay resilient and focused on this big matchup ahead.
Well, you're 100% right. This is, I think, obviously will be the most watched, biggest game this week versus Langston. A historically really good program. We've obviously got a little bit of history with them. Played them in the state championship game 4 years ago. One that we feel like we kind of let get away on us, and we're certainly had them circled on our calendar for a long time. We knew at some point we were going to cross paths again, and we've been looking forward to this matchup. Our kids over the last 2 weeks, I think, have done a great job staying focused, certainly amongst all the uncertainty. I know it's been difficult for them, but they've always known that we were going to have their back and we were going to have them in the best opportunity to play whenever that time came. So really excited for our kids to be able to get back on the field on Friday night and know that they're focused and ready to go.
Yeah. I want to ask you about those initial 38 suspensions, just someone that was being at the game and saw what took place. What was your initial reaction to that, and how quickly did you guys move forward to try to appeal it?
Well, obviously was very concerned about it on that Friday night. I turned to our superintendent when we went up 28-0 and told him, I said, I'm very concerned right now. We've got this game in hold, and the other team had been pretty chippy. They had a player that was throwing punches all night, and I was very concerned. I knew our coaches were doing a great job of going up and down the sideline, telling our kids to keep their heads, and if something happens, to walk away. So I was immediately concerned, whenever the incident broke out. It was certainly very unfortunate for everybody involved. But we stayed in contact with the GHSA all over that weekend. Probably talked to Dr. Scott 4 or 5 times on Saturday, 4 or 5 times on Sunday. They had told us that they would have an answer for us by lunchtime on Sunday. So Dr. Scott had called and told me, hey, I'm getting ready to send you this ruling. Let me know what you want to do. And so as soon as I got it and opened it up, immediately called him up and said, yeah, we're gonna have to appeal this. There's no way this doesn't make sense. So and he immediately said, hey, we'll get the board of trustees together and we'll have that conversation.
Right, and then that first appeal, I believe, just overturned it for maybe 4 of the athletes, said those guys could play, but that wasn't good enough, you guys felt. So how quickly was the next decision made?
So I mean, as soon as that appeals meeting was over with, obviously we didn't appreciate how the appeals meeting was handled to begin with. We felt like we had certainly an extenuating circumstance for how the whole thing unfolded. Again, I always want to recognize and thank Steve Waters at Brunswick for how he has handled that situation on their end, coming out very quickly and taking accountability and responsibility for their role and being very open and honest that he didn't feel like we should be penalized for how their kids, created that situation. So I certainly thank them for their support in this situation from the very beginning. And for me, it's always been, if you got both schools that are aligned in how the situation should be handled, I don't know why you go out of your way to, make it a more difficult situation than it has to be. But once that appeals meeting kind of went that way, we touched base internally to kind of talk about what our next steps were. Reached out to our school system attorney and asked their advice, and from there it just kind of started moving pretty quickly.
Then, Coach, this is a situation that I think as a football community, we kind of want to avoid moving forward. Just what do you think can be implemented just to try to avoid situations like this?
Well, I think first and foremost, common sense. I think, you can't make a blanket statement for a rule. And first of all, I want to make sure everybody understands the rule that everybody's repeating is not an actual rule. It's not actually in the bylaws that if a student steps off the sideline that they're automatically ejected. That is not in the Constitution and bylaws, which is obviously one of our concerns from the very beginning. But if we're going to institute an unwritten rule like that, it has to be done with common sense. We have to be able to review the film and talk about what caused the situation, what happened in the situation, and who was involved, and to what level were they involved. And I think that's one of the things I know from our end. Both Steve Waters at Brunswick and myself offered to the GHSA to meet them in the office on Monday morning and sit down and watch the film, and let's have real logical conversations about what the situation was. And we were denied that opportunity. And I think if we had been given that opportunity from the very beginning, and the GHSA office was willing to listen, we could have avoided all this, I think, without a doubt.
And then, Coach, just let's talk about this game a little bit. Just what are you looking forward to? When it comes to this game, just finally being able to get it played?
I first and foremost, I look forward to just seeing our kids out there. I know that for our kids that are seniors this year, they played in that game, or were at least at the game when we played Langston Hughes in the state championship. So I think that's going to be a big deal for them to try to complete the task that 2022 team couldn't do. So just looking forward to a great game. Tons of respect for Langston Hughes and the program that they run over there. They always have a perennial state contention team. And, that's what we want to be year in and year out. And, to be that, you got to kind of win these games. So it's certainly an opportunity that our kids are excited about. And we're all excited about just making it to Friday night and getting on the field.
And Mr. Lindsey, just talk about that leadership role that you've seen from Coach Niblett in the midst of this situation with his football program.
Well, you always can't say enough about Coach Niblett, how he runs this program. His faith, is obviously a huge driver in him and how he runs his team. He prides himself on keeping his kids connected, the relationships that those kids build within that program. So he's done an incredible job just trying to keep the kids, focused on whatever the next task at hand is. So I can't say enough for what he's done and the support he's been for our kids. I know he's pumped and excited to get on the sideline on Friday night.
Yeah, and it seemed like the entire Gainesville community, you mentioned some of the superintendents were all kind of on the same page with this. Just talk about how important that was just to have this Gainesville community rally.
Well, I think, first and foremost, it was kind of an unwavering thing in our community that everybody believed what we were doing was right, believed that the message we were sending was the correct one. We're all for rules, number one, if they're rules and if they're going to be instituted in a common sense manner, then we obviously understand that and are going to support that. But from top to bottom within our school system, everybody's been on the same page. We're fortunate we had a board member that sat in the appeals meeting with us, so his support for our appeal. Our community has been amazing, showing their support. It's been overwhelming, honestly, for all the people that have reached out, people that I haven't heard from in a long time, not just within our community, but across the state and across the country, the support that we've received throughout this process. So it's been amazing.
Again, that was Gainesville Athletic Director Adam Lindsey. Mr. Lindsey, thank you so much for joining us today, and best of luck to your team on Friday night.
Thanks so much. Appreciate you guys.
We will be right back after this short break with more Georgia High School Sports Daily. Stay tuned.
Customer service is everything in our industry, and one thing our clients love is when they call Breda, they get a live representative. At Breda, you get the attention you need and deserve right when you call in. Your appointment gets scheduled right then and there, and you get a specific time, no window of arrival. Our staff are your neighbors. They know what's going on in your community, and they're invested in doing it better.
Breda, Breda, no need to be afraid of bugs.
A journeyman with Local 85, when you turn out, you can be hitting six figures.
Hey, I have your back, you have my back, we're gonna do this together. We're one for all for one.
College just wasn't for me. Let's look into actual career jobs that wouldn't take college, where I wouldn't, lose money and all that. Instead of losing a lot more money at the end, why not make money and make more money at the end?
You may know Tidal Wave Auto Spa as the world's greatest car wash, but did you know Tidal Wave also has the easiest fundraiser? So easy, our mascots think they can do anything, like making the big play on the big stage. Okay, maybe just a dream, but it is a super easy fundraiser. Just sell wash tickets and watch the money come in. If your team, school, church, or group needs funds, go to TidalWaveAutoSpa.com and get started today.
Nothing is as pure and special as high school sports in the state of Georgia. And Score Atlanta is its #1 fan. High school sports are about families, kids chasing their dreams, communities supporting their teams year in and year out, neighborhood signs, and off-season workouts when nobody's looking. It's the biggest stage that young athletes get to climb for the very first time. And Score Atlanta wants to connect your brand with Georgia high school sports in ways that have never been available before. In addition to our Georgia High School Sports Daily Show, Score Atlanta provides continuous coverage of the Georgia high school football season through its televised games, stories, and rankings. Score Atlanta puts on some of the most notable events like the Corky Cal Dave Hunter Classic, the Georgia High School Football Hall of Fame, and the Georgia Elite Classic. All of these elements offer sponsors exclusive opportunities and exposure. So let's talk about how you can reach millions of people who enjoy Georgia high school sports. For more information, contact Score Atlanta today.
Not bad about it. Welcome back into Georgia High School Sports Daily. We are at the Breda Pest Management Sports Desk, and now we're going to take a look at our Week 3 basketball rankings, beginning with our 6A classification. Craig, just talk about what you have seen from this Wheeler team at the start of the season, and then overall, let's just talk about the dominance of these top 5 teams.
Yeah, so Wheeler has been the most dominant. They are 3-0 right now. They beat McEachern last week 68-59. That was one of their first really big tests, so that solidified their spot at #1. You have Grayson playing extremely well. Then 86-58 win at Central Gwinnett. They are 4-0, and they have a matchup against Melissa. This is a school out of Texas this week, so they're playing that national circuit. An interesting team that dropped this week was Buford. They are 2-1. They had a really tough loss to Lanier, 86-70. They bounced back from it. They'll play, I believe, Mountain View coming up. So that's why Buford dropped all the way from #4 to 10. And then Hillgrove's the team that jumped up this week. They had a big win over Dutchtown, 72-71, I believe, and then a win over Pace Academy, who's still searching for that first win of the season. Westlake's been battle-tested. Cherokee, they have 2 very narrow losses. They lost to Alexander, one of the best teams in Class 5A, 59-54, and then 65-64 to Milton. So those are 2 top 10 losses, very competitive. Berkmar, they're 4-1. They've won 3 straight games. And then the other team that I have not mentioned is Meadow Creek. They are 6-1 right now. Their only loss was to Holy Innocents earlier this year.
Now let's take a look at our 5A classification. Craig, just talk about if there's been any movement in this classification, and then what makes this Gainesville team your #1 spot and any of the other standout teams you've seen at the start of the season.
Right, so for Gainesville, their jump this week came from 2 big victories. They beat Dutchtown 69-67 and then turned around, I believe, with only a day rest, and beat Woodward Academy 52-51. 2 very solid wins. They'll open up region play against Chattahoochee. They're 5-0 right now, and that bumped them up to #1. I really like those 2 victories. You see Milton and Dutchtown both still ranked after those losses. Tri-Cities, the #1 team heading into the season, they dropped down just slightly. They're 1-3, but you look at their losses: Wheeler, McEachern, and Hillgrove. Then they got in the win column with a big win over ELCA, a team that's in the top 10 in Class 4A. Alexander, they're 3-0. Wins over Peachtree Ridge, Cherokee, and then Cedar Grove 88-87. So solid wins for Alexander. You got Hughes still playing extremely well. They'll be a team to watch. Habersham Central, They cling on to that number 10 spot. They have beaten Cedar Shoals this season and then 2 wins over Athens Christian. And then Bradwell Institute moved up 1 spot. They are 5-0 off to a great start.
Now let's take a look at our 4A classification. Craig, have there been any teams in this classification that have been surprising to you? And then talk about that North Oconee team claiming that number 1 spot.
Yeah, so North Oconee, they're the 2-time defending champs. This year will be a little different without Kamari Brooks, but they've got a ton of talent, and their only loss came to Queens Grant at Hoopsgiving. That was an out-of-state team, lost 59-57. Not going to be punished for that loss, but still a little concerning. Jonesboro's playing very well, and then Pace Academy. This is a team that is probably in that conversation heading into the season as a number 1 team, but they're 0-3 after a brutal schedule to open the season, still searching for that first win. You got Southwest DeKalb. They're 6-1. They've, I believe, just got back from a trip to the Bahamas to play Paideia. They got the win in that one. Westminster is still 6-1. And then we talked about Elka, extremely competitive team, just coming off that loss to Tri-Cities.
Now let's take a look at our 3A classification, Craig, right here. Let's look at these top 3 teams. You have Cross Creek, Sandy Creek, and Cedar Grove. Just talk about what you've seen from them at the start of the season, and are there any standout teams on this list that might have been surprising?
Well, what's interesting is with Sandy Creek and Calhoun, I believe neither of them have even opened their season yet. So they're just still waiting, but 2 teams I'm very confident in this year. Cross Creek still at number 1. They had a 56-55 loss to Milton, so that's not a bad loss at all. Right in there competitively. We'll see Cherokee Bluff coming up soon this year. That's a very talented program. You got Douglas playing very well, and then the team that moved up this week was Baldwin, jumping up from number 10 to number 6.
Now let's take a look at our 2A classification. Craig, just talk about how you selected this list overall for this top 10 and the teams that are going to be to watch moving forward.
All right, so this week, Carver Columbus is still number 1. Columbia made a really strong case to potentially take that over, but they sit solid at number 2 again. Butler, they've racked up some big wins. Franklin County took a jump from number 10 to number 6 this week. I really like the way they're playing. You got Lakeview, Fort Oglethorpe is a new team this week, replacing Hart County. And then you got Morgan County in there at dropped them out. You got Salem at number 9 and then Union County at number 10 after being at number 8 last week.
Now let's take a look at these D1 teams here, Craig. Just talk about those standout, shocking teams on this list and talk about the dominance of Putnam County, Southwest Macon, and Rabun County.
Yeah, Putnam County, same sort of thing. They'll have a loss on their schedule, but super competitive. Still looks like the team to beat. Toombs County is playing very well. See them holding on to the spot at number 10. Temple at number 9 for the 2nd consecutive week. You got Best Academy at number 4, and then Rabun County is that team at number 3. They have a pretty favorable schedule. They've been playing very well.
Now let's take a look at these D2 teams. Who are going to be your teams to watch on this list moving forward?
I think in Class A Division II, you got Randolph Clay at number 3. They moved up from number 5 to start the year. Turner County's playing very well. And then Chattahoochee County is a team I did not have ranked in the preseason, but they debuted last week at number 10. They moved up to number 8. It's a team that's had some impressive results so far.
Now let's take a look at our private classification. Craig, just has there been any movement here, and who have been some of your favorite teams you've seen at the start of the season?
Yeah, so in the private, Walker is a team that came on really strong last season, and they have pummeled opponents so far this season. Mount Bethel is a team that you got to watch for. They have a lot of talent this year, some big-time transfers, some newcomers. They are a very complete team. Holy Innocents, obviously the defending champs, they look very great. Green Forest Christian's actually the team that went down to the Bahamas, played Southwest DeKalb, had a big 62-45 victory. And then Paideia is struggling a little bit this season. They're 1-7, but they're playing one of the toughest schedules. I'm not going to drop them out yet. I feel like once they get into some of the more even competition within the classification, you'll see the results start to come. They're going to be very battle-tested.
And Greg, we mentioned this earlier, but we have our Corky Kell Dave Hunter Basketball Classic event coming up. We're going to get to see some of these basketball teams. Just talk about what you're most looking forward to at this event. And for people who have never been to this event, what can they expect?
Well, I like that it's 2 days. We're going to get 2 kind of different flavors of basketball. I think day 2, an interesting matchup for me. You got West Forsyth against Riverwood. Riverwood is an outstanding basketball program. They're still searching for their first win this season. Another team, day one, Newton, they have gotten off to a start that probably not ideal. They're trying to figure some things out, but I feel like this comes at the right time of the season where they've had several games under their belt. I feel like we're going to see some great basketball.
And this is going to be great exposure for these athletes. You can scan your screen to buy tickets, and these events are going to be on Atlanta News First and the Peachtree Sports Network. We're going to be right back after this short break to talk with our Jack Gallagher about recruiting in the state of Georgia. Stay tuned. Welcome back into Georgia High School Sports Daily. We are at the Breda Pest Management Sports Desk, and now we will welcome our very own Jack Gallagher to the desk to talk about recruiting updates in the state of Georgia. Jack, we have a huge matchup coming up this Friday night. That's going to be Gainesville versus Hughes. Kickoff is set to take place at 7:30. You can tune in right here at 7 o'clock, starting with our pregame coverage. But, Jack, just talk about who are going to be some of those players to watch, starting with this Hughes team, and update us on the recent news with some of their players.
Yeah, so the biggest news coming out of this matchup is running back Carson Baker decommits from Florida last night. He was committed to Florida since the summer. Florida brings in a new coach, John Sumrall. Carson Baker was very patient through this process, trying to figure out who this next coach was going to be at Florida. As far as I know, John Sumrall was hired on Sunday. He has a Zoom call with all the recruits. Carson Baker on that call. He ultimately makes his decision last night to decommit from Florida. Looking forward into his recruitment. North Carolina and South Carolina are the two teams to watch. I think South Carolina has the lead going into Wednesday, which is when Carson Baker will sign. Curious to see how things shake out, but he felt that his place was not at Florida, so we'll look and see if he ends up at South Carolina or at North Carolina. Also on this Hughes team, his backfield brother, Quantavious Wiggins, he recently committed to Wisconsin. He will also sign during the early signing period. Things still looking good for Wisconsin in terms of getting Quantavious Wiggins in this class. Also, Amari Latimer is in that class. Still don't know where he's going to end up. Miami and Tennessee both making a last-second run here at Amari Latimer. I think Wisconsin has confidence that they will retain him in this class, but Miami also has confidence that they can flip him and ultimately get his signature on Wednesday.
Now let's take a look at this Gainesville list. We're actually going to get to hear from Xavier Griffin tomorrow for National Signing Day, but he is on this Gainesville roster. Just talk about some of these recruits who are going to be watching on Friday night.
Yeah, well, they have two studs in Xavier Griffin, like you mentioned, and Jamarian Matthews. I think the recruitments for these two, both committed to Alabama, a complete 180 from what we've seen with Carson Baker. Obviously, this has been a very interesting coaching carousel going on in college football. So a lot of people flipping, decommitting in these last few days as things ramp up towards signing period. But with guys like Xavier Griffin and Jamarian Matthews, what a lot of schools that have consistency at that head coaching spot can preach is, hey, you can come here and win and play for championships and not worry about who your coach is going to be next year, like a lot of these schools have. I mean, you've seen it with the LSUs and the Penn States and the Floridas and the UCLAs. I mean, there's a number of schools where they're just now hiring coaches, so a lot of these kids are flipping away or decommitting, and they're not going to end up with the team they committed to in the summer. But with Xavier Griffin, been committed to Alabama for a while. He's from Alabama. He's the #1 player in the state of Georgia. Not a very dramatic recruitment for him, and he's going to put pen to paper with the Tide during the early signing period. No real stress there for Alabama. Same thing with Jamarian Matthews, top 10 edge in the nation. Again, an Alabama native. Actually transferred to Gainesville and then committed to Alabama, but no drama there. I think there's been murmurs that Kalen DeBoer is going to move around. I don't think there's any merit there. Kalen DeBoer is going to be the coach at Alabama next year. So not very stressful recruitments for Alabama or for these kids. Leading into early signing period, he will sign with Alabama this week as well. And I think that's a positive for these players going into playoffs, is they don't have to worry about recruitment on top of preparing for a playoff game.
And Jack, let's take a look at some other of these recruits that you have on your list. But 3-star Sprayberry safety Keelan Jones has flipped from the University of Georgia to Georgia Tech. We actually got to see him play this season, and this might come as a surprise after that Georgia defeat over the Yellow Jackets, but just talk me through this list.
Well, I think this is an interesting one in regards to Keelan Jones. We talked about it last week, that Georgia Tech game played in Atlanta last Friday. And with a lot of these in-state kids, that was a game that a lot of these kids want to go to because they're in the top 3s or the top 5s or the top 10s for a lot of these recruits. For Keelan Jones, maybe a blessing in disguise. Sprayberry was eliminated from the playoff in their first-round game against Lee County, so he was able to attend that game. And that was a home game for Georgia Tech, technically, so he was a Georgia Tech visitor. And I think that visit kind of put the icing on the cake, and he ultimately flips last night. So, like we mentioned, that's a game where the people that are visiting are people that are already eliminated from the playoffs, and then, you know, the Georgia Tech or Georgia can make a big move on these guys. Ultimately, Georgia Tech flips Keelan Jones from Georgia, so a big move there, and I think the crucial part was him being able to go to that game.
And then Jack, just talk me through these other players on this list.
Yeah, 3-star Woodward Academy safety Blake Stewart. He's down to 2 SEC programs. He decommitted from Clemson recently. He's made several trips to Georgia. Since that decommitment, it's the place he's been on campus the most is Athens. But Vanderbilt making a late push. Vanderbilt, they're pitching good academics and early playing time to Stewart. I think that early playing time is something that catches a lot of these kids' eye, something, especially in a defensive backroom at Georgia, probably not going to be able to get on the field early. So both Georgia and Vanderbilt have very good recruiting pitches out there for Blake Stewart. This recruitment is going to be a battle until the pen hits the paper. And then last on that list, Jordan Carter. He backed off his pledge to Texas A&M earlier in November. Texas had him on campus right after that decommitment. He's visited Georgia Tech and Auburn. I think Tennessee has momentum heading into early signing period, but Georgia Tech and Auburn still in it, going to try to beat out Tennessee for Jordan Carter.
Well, as I mentioned, our game of the week is going to be Gainesville versus Hughes this upcoming Friday night. Kickoff is set to take place at 7:30. You can tune in right here starting at 7 o'clock for pregame coverage and stick around with us all night as we get closer for the GHSA state title. As always, thank you for tuning in with us today, and we will be right back here tomorrow with more Georgia High School Sports Daily.
We saw some squirrels were trying to get into the attic. I hear those squirrels still scampering through because I didn't go through those services initially.
Our job is to go up there and figure out where they're getting in and trap and remove and get those unwanted guests out. But then the next big step is not just seal the entry point where the critter got in, but seal the entire roof line. The most common mistake is only sealing the entry point you see.
Breda, no need to be afraid of bugs.
For a healthier future together, look to Northside Hospital.
What happens after you graduate? Will you go to the next level? Will people have your back in the heat of battle? Will you still train like a champion in the pursuit of greatness? You will when you become an IBEW electrical worker. Join our team. Visit IBEW613.org.